Now, you see this attack and you take to Instagram and you post this story. Now, in your story, you wrote about how because you went to a Jewish school, people would throw rocks at the bus and sometimes wait in groups to chase us when we got off. And I remember this. This was happening from the start when we were in year 7. And for me personally, this was when I first started to understand and experience anti-Semitism myself. I'm wondering, was this the same for you, or had you come across anti-Semitism before? And what impact did it have on you?
I think I had come across anti-Semitism before that, but I was young and kind of slightly unaware. But if I would walk to shul or synagogue, you know, I wouldn't go religiously every Saturday, but when we did, there would always be people that drove past and would shout stuff out the car. And, you know, within the couple of mile radius of the synagogue, there was CST and security on each corner of the street. And so as you would grow up and become more aware, you would kind of understand that, okay, if these are precautions that we need to take, then, you know, obviously we're not as safe as we would like to be. But the start of my secondary school life was when I realized that anti-Semitism is very real, and that because we wore a school uniform that identified us as going to a Jewish school, we, you know, and it sounds dramatic, but we had a target on our back. It was very obvious. And there were other kids from other schools that didn't like that we were Jewish, didn't like that we went to a Jewish school, and would try and intimidate us, would, as you said, throw rocks and stones at our school bus. They would wait for, you know, us as we got off the bus, because we would get off in small groups and intimidate us and chase us home. And that's when it got quite real, because I can vividly remember, you know, running up that hill like my life depended on it, because I didn't know who was behind me or what was coming for me. And that was at a point that I realized that anti-Semitism is real and it exists, and it is dangerous. And it took me a long time to understand and process that not everyone hates Jewish people. Because for a long time, I believed that my Jewish identity was going to put me in an unsafe position and environment, and I would be attacked or hurt. And only when I left school just after my GCSEs, I joined a pop group, and I went out and traveled all over the UK, and I met people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds. And at first I had a massive chip on my shoulder about being Jewish, because I had trauma from what I had experienced. And slowly but surely I realized that, okay, not everyone wants to attack me and hates me, and that my experiences sadly were, and what I hope to still be true, was a small minority of people that have these warped opinions and aren't a key part of society, that just want to create fear into other people's lives. I don't think they knew why they were chasing us, really. I think it was just, you know, I think obviously they knew we were Jewish and they were chasing us because of that, but if you asked them why, they wouldn't be able to say, oh, because they've done this or that. It was just part of what they thought was right in some crazy way.
Yeah, I you know, we got to remember, these were also children. These weren't adults chasing us. These were also 11, 12, 13-year-old kids chasing us of that age. I can only assume this is a learned behavior that they would have gathered from, you know, people older than them or media they would have consumed. But nonetheless, it's really terrifying when you're being chased and you don't really know why you're being chased. And someone has to explain to you it's because you're Jewish and there are these, you know, incorrect stereotypes about Jewish people.
For sure. You know, it wasn't, our school uniform was what it was like any other school uniform, but all school uniforms are different colors. I'm Jewish. I'm not a religious person. You wouldn't noticeably see that I'm Jewish unless you either asked my name and my background, or you knew that I went to a Jewish school. And so for me, it was such a weird contrast, because when I was out of school uniform, I was just like everyone else. And then all of a sudden I was in school uniform, and I felt like I had this target on my back and I had to be scared. And, our school was fortified. It was, I think back to that. There was security everywhere. We had 2, 3, 4 sets of gates. We had fences that were super high. We had automatic doors that would lock. It was, we were, and you have to ask yourself, there's precaution, and then there's the question of reality, that if we didn't need that, then we wouldn't have it. Because all these other schools I went to, when we would play sports and stuff like that, they had one school gate, and was open all the time, and you'd drive in and, there was the school.
Right. That must have been quite a shock. I know it was a shock for me when I first found out when I was 18 at university. We were talking about schools. I think I casually mentioned in passing, you know how your school has security? And they were like, no. And I was like, the guys who stand outside your school. And I had to explain to them. And then that's sort of when I realized that, not all schools have this. In fact, very few do.
I'm sure you remember it too. Our school bus would get searched before entering. A security guard would come on. They would walk down the aisles. They would make sure that there was only school children, that nothing suspicious was going on. And that was normal to us. But that's not normal behavior in a first world Western country.
No.
And so they're realities that we accepted and only learned later in life, that actually not everyone experiences that and goes through that. And don't get me wrong, I had a good upbringing. My family loved me. I had a good education, thankfully. It was a public school, but it was all good. Things could have been a lot worse. But in our reality, it was intense at points.
It was very intense, and all of those things, they don't necessarily negate the fact that you're still essentially a kid becoming a teenager, and your experience of education is a humongous man stepping onto your school bus to see if anyone's there to hurt you. That's in the morning. That's like before you even get to school. That's the start of your day. It's very intense.
Yeah.